At that time, when Jesus entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came up to him as he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?" Jesus answered them, "I also will ask you one question. And if you tell me the answer, then I also will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, from where did it come? From heaven or from man?" They discussed it among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But if we say from man, we are afraid of the crowd, for they all hold that John was a prophet." So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." The Gospel of the Lord. My dear brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, today's readings bring out to us that the ultimate authority comes from God, and there is no amount of earthly coercion that can overcome the power of God. Every form of human authority on earth is a delegated authority, and it will be called into account by God. Most recently in the news, we read of a particular CEO of a company who, in the course of a Zoom call, fired 900 of his employees. It was a show of strength, a show of power, and in the stroke of one order from the mouth of the CEO, 900 employees lost their livelihoods. But it was in the news because it was perceived as a very negative act on the part of the CEO. Just yesterday, the news came that he was asked to take leave for a long time. This is not the way that God exercises his authority. This is not the way that God expects us as human beings to exercise authority. In the first reading, the prophet, or rather the diviner Balaam, is ordered by the Gentile king Balak to curse Israel, the chosen people of God. And so Balaam, obeying the Gentile king's orders, goes up to the Israelite camp and is about to cast his curse upon Israel. But instead of the words of curse coming out from his mouth, inspired by the very power and the spirit of Yahweh, Balaam pronounces a blessing on Israel. And from the mouth of this Gentile diviner, God speaks. And God says that the star of David will appear from Israel. So remember, this is from the book of Numbers, much before the time of David. And so this Gentile diviner becomes the one through whom Yahweh prophesies that one day a king will arise from Israel to save Israel and unite Israel in the promised land. In the New Testament times, the early Christians saw this promise of the star in the star of Bethlehem, which guided the wise men or the magi to the manger where Jesus was born. Jesus is God's authority on earth. And in the gospel passage, the Pharisees and scribes, who were the rulers of the religious world in his time, thought that they can coerce Jesus into an answer by asking him or demanding him, "By what authority do you do these things?" Because they perceived that even though Jesus was not technically speaking from their school of thought, he was not even a recognized rabbi, but Jesus spoke and worked with such authority. So they wanted to know, on whose authority was he working? But Jesus is not coerced by their religious power. And he asks them a counter question. By what power did John do his works? By God's power or by human power? Now, the Pharisees and scribes, again, they show how weak their leadership is because they are concerned about how people will perceive them. They are not able to answer. They say, if we say that it is from God, then they will ask us why we didn't believe in John. And if we say it is from man, then the people who loved John will be against us. They show how weak their leadership is because it is not a moral leadership. My dear brothers and sisters, today as we reflect on these passages and how God is not coerced by human calculations and manipulations, perhaps the Lord is asking us as parents, as maybe educationists, as leaders in different capacities in the church and in the secular world, how are we exercising our authority? Is it with genuine care and concern for the dignity and the welfare of those under our power? Or is it for selfish and self centered motives? In this Holy Eucharist, Jesus comes to purify our motives, to be animated by His Spirit, to be filled with His love, and to be rooted and grounded in the gospel in every aspect of our lives. Let us bring our responsibilities to the Lord in this Eucharist. He knows our fears, He knows our anxieties for what we are responsible for. Let us place those fears and anxieties at His feet. Help us to be leaders in love.